Hey guys, this is Dan Wallwacker, Cold Cracker Bushcraft. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about axe maintenance when we're in the field and how to keep your blade sharp, and also just a little bit about safety. You saw when I was cutting with this axe, it's a smaller axe. This is 19 inches. I'm kneeled down. I have an anvil stump that I'm working on, and I'm splitting my wood. One thing you need to remember when using an axe that I see a lot of people forget is if you have a smaller axe like this, we need to be in a position that if we miss, we go into the dirt rather than standing up and going into our leg. So that's one important thing I see a lot of people do, and they don't realize the danger that an axe can be. But doing this, if we do slip up and go into the dirt, can cause damage to our axe blade. So we want to talk a little bit about that today, how we can repair that, how if that doesn't happen, we can still keep our axe nice and sharp out in the field, and what we need to do once we make this investment of keeping our handle healthy and keeping our blade from rusting. So I'm going to get the camera repositioned, get some tools out, and we're going to talk about that. So how do we take care of our axes? Because an axe for a woodsman should be one of their most important tools. We of course rely heavily on our belt knife, and that seems to be the draw everyone goes to. But in all reality, if you learn how to properly use an axe, this is always going to be your go-to tool before you should ever be drawing your knife out of your sheath. If you know how to use this properly, we should be able to split logs, do finer carvings, even carve feather sticks. If we need to cut rope, twine, or anything heavier, this is the tool for the job. We want to try to maintain our blade that's on our hip as much as possible, rather than waste that and keep this up to snuff. So when I say that, I don't mean to, damage this by any means or misuse this, but this is going to hold up to all those rigors because this is what it's built for, is for that durability and heavier tasks. So first of all, when we think about an axe, how we're going to take care of it, keeping a sheath on our axe is one of the most important things, because if this isn't on here and we're just throwing it around, there's a possibility it can get chipped or we can injure ourselves. So you always want to keep your sheath on, keep it close, and in my opinion, if you're using it around camp, don't just lay it down and keep the sheath in your pocket. When you use it, put your sheath on, set it down somewhere safe, and that's going to prolong the life of your axe for sure. So let's first talk about sharpening. What do we need to do to sharpen this blade? Well, it depends on what's the matter with the blade, first of all. When I talked earlier in the video, if we're cutting correctly, or we misplaced a chop, or we cut into bark, maybe that had some rock or something in it, and we chip our blade, we need to approach that differently than if we just needed to sharpen it or hone our blade the way it is. So this video is not going to go into reprofiling an axe. We're assuming we already have a sharp, well-profiled axe, and we just want to maintain this in the field. So let's start with the worst case scenario. Okay, we miss what we're chopping at, we chop into the dirt, we get a chip out of our axe. So to remove a chip, depending on the size of it, we may have to go to a file, okay? So we're gonna have stones and we're gonna have files. So first we're gonna start by talking about files a little bit. This is a mill bastard file. You can get a coarse or fine, but a mill bastard's right in the middle. That's a medium grit file. And that's what you're gonna want initially to start with your axe to clean up that chip. So if I had a chip in this, all that we're looking to do is we're taking our file and we're filing away from the sharp edge, okay? And we're gonna take this and you wanna sharpen away. And we wanna be consistent when we do this, okay? Down the edge of the blade. The reason I'm saying we wanna be consistent, if we just keep sharpening up at this top end, we're gonna start to get a valley in here, okay? Or we can throw out the smooth curvature of this. So we're going to file the whole length of the blade like that, and then we're going to want to come to the other side and do the same thing. And I'm going to get a little bit more detail with this in a minute. I just wanted to go over the basics of what we're looking for, and I'm going to show you guys how we'd actually run this across the blade. So that's what we're doing with a file, and the file is going to remove a lot more material than any stone ever would. So we're doing this coarse type file, mill bastard, but our coarser type material removal compared to a stone with our file. So that's one tool that you'd want to have around, is a file, to be able to remove material in order to get those chips out of our axe. So once our chips are out, we should be close to somewhat of a sharp edge. okay? Now we can go into the next stage, which is actually using a stone. Now there's tons of different types of stones out there, and it really, in my opinion, you need to just get stones and work with them and see what works best for you. I used all different ones over the years, and I'm going to show you some of my favorite things to carry right now, and I'm going to just talk about why they're my favorite. If you're going to carry multiple stones, carrying a puck type stone is definitely one of my favorite. This has a coarse and a fine side, and we can use this stone very easily because the way we palm it and work this on our edge. So it's very easily maneuverable for a person to be able to sharpen up our edge. So this would definitely be my go-to. My only downfall with this is if we were going to sharpen our knives, and this is all we have a very small working surface to be able to work our knives on. So there are better options, but this will work to sharpen a knife. Another option is a carborundum stone. Now you can buy these, you see the end of this is chipped off. You can buy these, I think I paid $1 for this at a junk store. And this will work just as well as our puck. The only problem with this is you're not going to have multiple grit levels. What you have is what you have. So this is an option. This is a propeller type stone, so it's very easy to get in here and work with this, okay? So that's an option. And last is just our normal square stone. This is only one grit. This is a fine grit. You can get stones that have 2 different grits in them and they work fine. Something like this you can also work, and we're going to talk about that shortly. The good thing with a flat stone like this is if you only had one stone with you, or that's all you're going to carry, this is more conducive to working with a knife than the puck. So just keep that in mind. And like I said, there's so much stuff out there. I brought some other stuff out. This is a diamond plate with a stone. This works great. I prefer this more for my knife than an axe, but you can use this. And you really do, you have to just try this stuff. I have Nagura stone at home, and Japanese water stones. They work great, but again, that might be a series of 3 different stones to get to that final sharpness. And I really don't feel the majority of people need to get to that point. Not that you don't need a sharp axe, but you can get to a sharp axe with just this stuff if you know how to properly use it, rather than have to go through all them steps. Because that sharp of an axe, you have to have some skill level around to use that, or you're going to constantly chip your blade or bend your blade over if you don't know how to properly use this. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to just show you how we run a file over the edge, how we run our stone over the edge, and then we're going to talk from there, once our edge is resharpened, what we need to do to keep this axe up and running. First, we're going to discuss what if there was a chip. Now, there's no chip in this axe blade, but I can still show you guys how we would go about doing this. What we want to do is, if we can find a stump, that'll work best. You can do this freehand by holding your axe and running your file against here, but that I don't recommend. If you can find something to place your axe on and keep some pressure, that's going to be your best bet. So what we want to do is, first of all, make sure our file's clean. You can use a wire brush and just run it along. Okay, it's called a file card. You can run that along here and that'll clean out the shavings. Some people will also, I know some old machinists, that they actually put chalk in here, and the chalk is going to help keep a lot of those filings out. So you want to make sure you have a good clean file. Okay, this file is, I believe this is a Nicholson, an old Nicholson I bought, but you can feel it just running your fingers down if the file is good or not. So what we want to do, we want to anchor down our axe, and we want to work the whole blade. And I always like to count how many times I go on one side. This axe has a good bevel on it, so if I would do on this side here 20 strokes, and this side 3 strokes, and then 20 on this side again, we're starting to get lopsided, and we don't want that. I know that this axe is in good working shape. Maybe I just got a chip out of it. So I'm going to normally do maybe 3 to 5 strokes on each side, if that. I mean, that's going to probably be a pretty deep chip. And then I'm going to flip the axe over and work on this side the same amount, back and forth until we work that chip out. And if the chip's very, very small, you really don't need to go to this extent. As you work on this and hone this, it'll work itself out. If you're doing super fine carving, yeah, you need to get it out of there, but otherwise you don't. So what are we looking at? Basically all we're doing is we're starting at the tip of our file and we're working across the edge. like this, okay? And you'll feel that starts grabbing on that metal. So I did 3 strokes that way. I'm going to flip it. And 3 more. So I would continue that process until we start to get that chip out. Now, when checking a blade, okay, you don't want to run your fingers across it, but you do want to just lightly, with your 3 fingers, just touch this, okay? And you're going to feel if there's a burr. You can come up the side, no burr, and you can feel down the middle, and you're going to feel that's going to start to get prickly almost. You don't want to press hard. I'm touching extremely lightly here, just like this, to feel what that feels like, okay? So I would continue that process with my file. If I need to clean out my shavings, of course, take your file card and scrub it. A little bit of steel wool will do that. You can also probably take your pant leg and go like this if you had nothing else, okay? Just to get some of those files out, because when that builds up, your file can be shot. So you want to treat your file just like we treat our axe. So super simple with the file. This can remove a lot of material, so you need to be careful you don't totally destroy your axe. My recommendation, buy an old axe at a junk store and practice on it. Okay, so this is what most people are going to do. Most people are probably going to have a puck or some other type of stone. And what we want to do with an axe blade, okay, is circular motions. Okay, so making sure we're in camera here. When we sharpen something like an axe blade, we're using circular motions. And I'm locking this axe blade in and I'm just moving my stone. I'm not trying to move my axe. We're not sharpening the entire blade at per circle. All you want to focus on is small pieces. So let me grab a stick here. So when I start to sharpen this, I'm actually, as my puck moves along the blade, I'm thinking, hey, I'm sharpening from here to here, here to here, here to here. Small sections. Don't think I'm sharpening the whole thing in one scoop. Small circles and focus on what you're doing. Now, and actually see if we can show you guys what we're doing here. So you can see there's a gap right now in between the axe. I'm going to try to keep my hand back there. The axe and the puck. So what I want to do is I want to close that off. And when you get closer this way, you're going to see, get a good angle here for you guys. There's a dark line in between. That's actually going to disappear. The second that disappears, okay, second that line disappears, you know you're on the right angle. And all that we're going to do is light circular motions. And I mean light, they don't have to be hard. And work our way up the axe head. Just trying to be consistent, only focusing on a small section at a time. And back. Okay, you can turn the axe around and do the same thing. We're just leaning our stone in until that black line disappears between the axe blade and our stone. The second that disappears, we want to keep that angle and just start to work. Again, if I went down and up, I want to do the same thing. Okay, just like that. So that's how we want to sharpen. How many passes would you need to hone? Well, you know, I could feel this. This was pretty sharp to start with. So I could just feel this. And you're going to feel when you do this, you're going to feel, I could feel right through this section, I could feel it sharp, not as much here. So what I want to do is just work that through again. Remember, doing the whole blade. We're not just working parts of the blade now. We're not trying to reprofile. If we know our blade's good, we want to keep it good. We're just trying to re-hone this. Alright, one pass through. And that already's touching it up a little bit. So just doing that is re-honing our axe back to where we need it and keeping it good and sharp. Now you can go further with this if you wanted to. If you want to use water stones, you can. If you wanted to strop this, then you can. Sometimes I'll take a diamond rod and I'll actually work this on a diamond rod a little bit. But this right here, there's not too much I can't do with this, and I consider myself pretty proficient with an axe. There's not too much that can't be done with how sharp this is. Some of my woodcrafting axes, I do get a lot sharper than this, but for my all-around bushcraft axe, this is definitely where it's at. So that's just up close how you use your file and use your stone to get a good sharp blade on your axe. Now that we have a good sharp edge on our axe, we have two things we need to take in consideration: our wood handle and the blade itself. What do we need to do to keep these things in good working order and not have them damaged? Well, one thing we can do is we can take birch oil, which I did a video on birch oil, and you can take birch oil, if we can get this one open here, take a little bit of birch oil, you don't need much, and we can just work that into our handle. Now the good thing with birch oil is it's going to offer some tackiness. So when you once you get this worked in, it's going to offer protection for your wood, and your wood's going to soak this in, but it's also going to add a little bit of tackiness to your handle, okay? So in wet conditions or anything like that, you have a little bit of that, but that's going to lend well overall. So you can use that birch oil. Boiled linseed oil is also another thing that you can use on your axe handles. Now, I did have the question asked to me not too long ago, if you have a brand new axe and you're going to apply any type of oils, let's say boiled linseed oil to that, how many coats? Well, you'd be surprised how much that wood is actually going to soak that oil in. So when I said to the person 10, they looked at me like 10 coats of oil. But that handle, you'll know when that handle is soaked in enough oil, and it's going to take some time to soak that oil in. The first application you put on, it'll probably soak in a couple minutes. The second one, probably an hour, and then it'll get slower from there. But you always want to keep this handle oiled up and don't allow it time to dry out. So that's one thing you need to worry about. And once that gets totally saturated, you're good for a long time before you need to reapply. So they're my two preferred methods for our wooden handles on an axe and any kind of wooden handle tools, birch oil or boiled linseed oil. So what about our blade? Well, any kind of oil would work. Anything from motor oil to vegetable oil to walnut oil would be fine. You can also take, I did a video on rendering tallow. You can work tallow into that, no problem whatsoever. Also, if you would take something like tallow and wax, a tallow and wax mixture, you can just work that in. What we're really focusing on is where we worked our blade. That's going to be most prone to rust initially. So we're just working that in and getting a good coat in there. One little trick you can do, if you take your sheath, you can work some oil into your sheath, because you should be keeping your sheath well oiled too, for the simple fact you don't want your leather to dry out. So working oil into this and having a little bit of extra in there, that's going to also protect from moisture or anything else for your axe head. If you're out in real wet conditions, one big mistake people make is they say, well, my axe is good, it's all cleaned up, I'm going to let it there, I didn't use it today, it's fine. Well, moisture still gets in here. We're working with natural materials here, you need to remember, with the leather. So that's going to hold moisture. If you let that go and this thing was wet inside, you're going to bring out a rusty axe, and then we're going to be way back to square one with working on this. So always make sure you're out in wet conditions, even around camp at night. You might want to open that up and dry that out good, and then on the next day or when the sun comes out, open that up, put it in a safe place and let it dry out good, and then put the sheath back on. So that's how you want to take care of your wood, your steel, how we take out chips, how we sharpen our axe. And remember, when you learn to use this properly, it's going to be your absolute best friend in the woods. This was Dan Welwack with Coal Cracker Bushcraft. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a lot more in the works. See you in the next video, guys.